Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here because we've got a lot to unpack. Today is one of those densely packed, incredibly volatile days in global news, where everything just seems to be happening at once. Honestly, if you want to understand where the world is heading, you really have to look closely at days exactly like today, July 27th, 2026. We're seeing massive movements on the geopolitical chessboard, we've got some unprecedented environmental emergencies happening, and huge shifts in our global systems. So my goal today is pretty simple. We are going to cut through all that noise. We'll look at the facts straight from the sources and map out this chaos so we can really grasp the big picture together.
Okay, let's dive right into this. To keep things organized, we're breaking today's events down into 4 quick chapters. First, Middle East conflict zones. Second, the war in Europe. Third, extreme global weather events. And fourth, law, trade, and tech. So what we are really looking at today is a snapshot of a world in profound flux. It's actually fascinating because when you take these totally disparate events and put them side by side, they stop just being random, chaotic headlines. They actually become this objective reflection of much broader, undeniable global trends. We are literally witnessing simultaneous peaks in regional conflicts, a rapidly changing climate, and, on the flip side, human ingenuity trying to keep pace with all of it. Let's start by looking at where the geopolitical tension is currently the most concentrated. Chapter 1, Middle East conflict zones, and what we're calling a fragile pause. Right, so after 13 straight nights of really intense airstrikes against Iranian targets, the United States has officially suspended its aerial campaign. Now, U.S. officials are stating that this pause is strategically designed to create some breathing room for diplomacy. Specifically, they're hoping this opens the door for some absolutely critical talks involving Oman and Qatar aimed at de-escalating the whole crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. But, and this is a really big but, it's crucial to note that while the bombing has stopped for now, American military assets are still firmly deployed in the region. So the standoff? It is far from over. And this perfectly illustrates the sheer complexity of the situation on the ground. Because despite that diplomatic pause we just talked about, escalations are happening at the exact same time. The IRGC, that's Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, is out there actively firing warning shots and intercepting commercial vessels trying to navigate U.S.-designated lanes in the Strait of Hormuz. And simultaneously, Iranian-backed Iraqi militias and Yemen's Houthi rebels have launched these coordinated drone strikes targeting major Saudi oil facilities, specifically hitting the Abqaiq field and areas around Riyadh. You know, this isn't just distant news happening a world away. These actions directly threaten global energy supply chains, which, for sure, eventually impacts what every single one of us pays at the gas pump. Now, these same tensions are also driving some massive geopolitical movements elsewhere. On the diplomatic front, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has just departed for some really high-stakes White House talks with President Donald Trump to directly address this Iran conflict and their nuclear program. Meanwhile, if we look further south to the conflict in Sudan, there's been a major tactical shift. The Sudanese Armed Forces, or SAF, have successfully secured the National Export Highway, pushing the Rapid Support Forces out of the North Kordofan territory after some really intense fighting around El Obeid. The map of regional power dynamics is literally shifting by the hour. Moving on to Chapter 2, the war in Europe, escalation and diplomacy. I want to take a moment to look at this number, and it's a very somber one. 377. According to Ukrainian officials, this is the number of civilian lives lost to Russian missile and drone strikes in the month of July alone. This tragically marks the highest monthly civilian casualty toll the nation has seen in over 4 years. On top of that, there are an additional 2,100 individuals reported injured across the country. The human cost of this conflict just continues to mount at a truly staggering pace. And the physical conflict is now spilling over borders, too. Romania has formally recalled its ambassador to Moscow and expelled a Russian diplomat. Why? Because 3 Russian drones repeatedly violated Romanian airspace over a really tense 48-hour period. But contrast those border violations with the diplomatic reinforcement happening at the exact same time. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky traveled to the UK for a very high-profile meeting with the newly elected Prime Minister, Andy Burnham. And notably, this meeting took place aboard the naval flagship HMS Queen Elizabeth, where Ukraine successfully secured continued military support. This stark juxtaposition, border violations on one hand and reinforced international alliances on the other, really defines the current state of the war. So, we've just analyzed all these human-driven conflicts shaking the global order. But here's a question for you.
What happens when the planet itself becomes the threat? It's a question we really can't ignore today because the natural world is demanding our immediate attention. Which brings us to Chapter 3, Extreme Global Weather Events, A World on Fire. Just look at this figure, 360,000 people. That's the number of residents and tourists who have literally been forced to evacuate their homes and vacation spots because of unprecedented, raging wildfires across southwestern France and central Spain. French President Emmanuel Macron has actually gone on record calling this the absolute worst fire crisis the country has faced since the Second World War. Entire regions like Gironde and Bordeaux are just battling these relentless flames. And at the very same time, across the Atlantic, an entirely different kind of weather emergency is taking place. A really severe, unyielding heat dome has just parked itself directly over the central and southern United States. This atmospheric lid has triggered extreme heat advisories that are currently impacting more than 130 million Americans. That is a massive chunk of the population trapped under some incredibly dangerous, stifling conditions. To really wrap your head around the severity of this U.S. heat dome, we have to look at the peak temperatures. We are not just talking about a hot summer day here. We are seeing heat index values pushed up to a staggering 115 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 46 degrees Celsius. I mean, that is literally melt your sneakers to the pavement kind of heat. It's the exact type of temperature that strains power grids to their absolute breaking point and poses a severe, immediate threat to public health. And yet, while North America and Europe are burning or baking, South Asia is facing the exact opposite extreme. Persistent, heavy monsoon rains have triggered devastating flash floods all across Pakistan. And this isn't just property damage we're talking about. The human toll is tragic. The national death toll from this flooding has reached 107 people since June, with more than 340 individuals reported injured. It's just a really stark reminder of the localized, devastating human impact of these global environmental shifts. Let's move to our final section, Chapter 4, Law, Trade, and Tech, Systems Adapting. So with all this global chaos we've just covered, how are our human systems actually holding up? Well, even amidst military and climate crises, the gears of human society do keep turning, sometimes breaking and sometimes advancing. Look at these 3 distinct updates from today. In law enforcement, German police neutralized a 21-year-old Islamic extremist named Abdul Balaut following a tragic vehicle and machete attack near Berlin's Brandenburg Gate that left 1 woman dead and 29 others injured. Over in international justice, the government of Chad announced formal plans to withdraw from the International Criminal Court, arguing that the court has a disproportionate focus on African nations. And in global trade, the highly anticipated Gordie Howe International Bridge has finally opened between the U.S. and Canada. Let's actually focus on that bridge for a second, because the sheer scale of it is incredible. This project cost $6 billion to complete. Connecting Detroit, Michigan and Windsor, Ontario, this infrastructure marvel is now officially open to commercial traffic. And what is so fascinating here is that despite ongoing, pretty contentious tariff disputes between the two nations, the essential need for a robust physical trade artery won out, pushing this massive project across the finish line. It's a huge win for supply chains that will ultimately help lower costs for consumers. Now check this out. This is where science fiction is literally becoming our regulatory reality. Tech giants SpaceX and Blue Origin are proposing orbital AI data centers because artificial intelligence requires so much energy and computing power, they want to launch the processing infrastructure directly into space. However, this has immediately sparked formal regulatory petitions at the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, from environmental groups. Scientists are raising urgent warnings that deploying these massive data centers into orbit could have catastrophic, unforeseen impacts on Earth's upper atmosphere. It perfectly illustrates how our technological ambitions are just vastly outpacing our understanding of the environmental consequences. Which brings us to the ultimate question we have to ask ourselves at the end of today's explainer. We've gone from missile pauses in the Strait of Hormuz to historic fires in Europe to the wild prospect of artificial intelligence processing data in outer space. So as we look at the immense complexity of these July 27th headlines, the question we are left with is this: are our current global institutions, our laws, our borders, our treaties, truly equipped to handle the crises of tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me today for this deep dive. Stay curious, keep learning, and I'll see you in our next explainer.